Доброго.
Hello. I'm glad to greet you in Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, and today we have the public expert discussion, European integration of Ukraine under attack, information space of Bulgaria, Poland, Romania, and the Czech Republic. The event is taking place within the project of Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, The Way of Ukraine to the EU Information Choice, which is implemented with the support of International Renaissance Fund. Well, today we will have the representative Olga Kvashuk, the manager of the program Europe and the World, International Foundation Renaissance. Yeah, greetings. Also, our speakers today are Natalia Agarkova, the chief editor and the founder of Ukrainian edition of the resource about Ukraine in the Czech Republic. She will join us online. We also in today's discussion, Kateryna Shymkevych will participate, the founder of Analytical Center for Balkan Studies, and today in our press center we have Sonia Dymytrova-Martyniuk, editor of StopFake Bulgaria. Hello, and Stanislav Zhelikhovskyi, candidate of political sciences, corresponding member of the Ukrainian Academy of Geopolitics and Geostrategy. And I am moderating today's event, Volodymyr Solovyan, head of the Hybrid Threat Analysis Group of the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. In the framework of this event, we will present the studies of the expert opinion, expert assessment that was conducted by Ukrainian Crisis Center during June this year, and also the topics that are in the focus of our today's event and our discussion actually, that is how Ukraine can advocate the idea of integration to European Union in the information space of 4 countries that are actually in the prism of our research: Bulgaria, Romania, Czech Republic and Poland, that is neighboring countries or countries that are important from the point of view of both logistics and supplies of weapons to Ukraine in support of Euro integration of Ukraine and development of the transition connections of Ukraine with the European continent. Also, a very important topic of our study will be recommendations for the authorities of Ukraine and Ukrainian civil society regarding advocacy and reacting to the main information challenges in media space of the mentioned 4 countries that are addressed to the topic of lobbying Euro integration of Ukraine. And separately, we will also talk about what kind of threats are there in terms of Euro integration in the context of attempts of Russia and Eurosceptical political powers to discredit Ukrainians and Ukrainian refugees who found their shelters in Poland, Czech Republic, Romania, and Bulgaria. I would also like to mention that given event is taking place with the support of the European Union and International Renaissance Foundation in the framework of joint initiative European Renaissance Ukraine, expert discussions showing the opinion of authors and is not mandatorily showing the opinion of the EU or International Renaissance Foundation. So now I would like to give the greeting word to the representative of the Renaissance Foundation. Thank you, dear colleagues. I will try to be really brief in terms of why was it important for us to support this project. It's a very important study, and we can see what kind of good partners we have in the neighboring countries. International Renaissance Foundation, in cooperation with the EU, actually for 10 years is being implementing the various initiatives that are aiming at qualitative reforms and promoting the membership of Ukraine in the EU. And lately, in the latest years, we are working a lot on our rebuilding, reconstruction, and resilience primarily, and also strengthening international support of Ukraine, because every day it requires more and more efforts, and we need to do that. So actually, at the end, we announced in the end of 2023 the competition for promoting Ukraine into the members of EU, and communication with the EU members, and Ukrainian Crisis Media Center is one of the winners of that competition. Very important application, because we can see, according to the results of the elections in the EU countries, that still They're a bit tired of war, so to say, and the electorate is not always for our benefit, and there is a huge presence of pro-Russian narratives. Very often we don't understand their origin, I mean, where they are coming from, but it is already in the masses, so to say, and it's very good that our colleagues with our partners in those Western countries, neighboring countries, and like Mr. Vladimir mentioned, that these countries are very important for us. We see what's been happening and what is happening on the Polish border, and it's very important for us to cooperate logistically with those countries. They were always considered our partners, and they are our partners. Therefore, it is very important to just act beforehand. We have to prepare our constructive kind of arguments or facts where there are elements of propaganda or where we have to promote something and to work with that region because it's very important for us. Now, when we are the country which is the datum, well, I guess working with Brussels, it's very important, but we will have to work more with the country members because there are many decisions and many votings will depend on them, and sometimes or quite often they are depending on their electoral mood. So in parallel we need to work on the political level and also with the society. So I will be very happy to hear the results, your results today. I mean, what did you find and how to work with those narratives? Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Ms. Olga. And before we switch actually to the presentation of the results of expert research, I would like to make a brief technical remark. We also have the opportunity to join the discussion and to address your questions to our speakers today via Zoom platform, and I actually can see that some experts who were participating in the questioning are here with us, so I encourage you to actively participate in the discussion. And I would like to remind you that you have the opportunity also to listen to this event in English version. And actually, I would like to thank our interpreters. So the presentation. Expert questioning Ukrainian integration in media space of 4 European countries that, as we already mentioned, are incredibly important for preservation and growing the tempos of Ukrainian integration. Primarily, I would like to mention a few words about the methodology of the given study. In general, we questioned more than 90 media experts from the 4 countries, Poland, Czech Republic, Bulgaria, and Romania. And mostly we were addressing the representatives of academic field. I mean, the like think tanks and journalists and international organizations. That is very expert field, which is representing the independent opinion of specialists in the media field who are directly involved to creating the content, and they are monitoring media space all the time of their countries. I would also like to mention that the given research is aiming more at finding the assessment and perception of the level of presenting the topic of Ukraine, Ukrainian Euro integration, the topic of Ukrainian and Russian war in the media space of the 4 countries, because in the evaluation, some quantitative measures were not taken into account, so given research can be considered as the first stage for the further research, more in-depth research, which, in the framework of which people involve some quantitative factors, and this is the vision of Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, that we need to involve also the methods and the potential of artificial intelligence for the media space of given countries. However, this kind of questioning for the specialists, it might show us some problems that we have to analyze with a more in-depth approach. I would like to mention one more time that this is aiming more at finding the level of perception, and we are questioning mostly how the experts in these 4 countries and in their opinion how in local media the topic of Euro integration of Ukraine is represented and the topic of Ukrainian and Russian war. Why did we select the 2 topics that, well, we can see that from the statements of Western politicians, the topic of security, economy, and also the context of European integration, of course, and perception of many societies of Europe and Ukrainian Euro integration is densely connected with the problems of war, and the dynamics on the battlefield will also impact the dynamics of negotiations about the membership of Ukraine in the EU. Then, as for the timings and dates when the research was conducted, second half of June, and it's also quite important taking into account that at this period there was official start of negotiations about the membership of Ukraine in the EU, and also there were elections to Euro Parliament. So our question number 5, as we will see later on, it was about the topic of presence of Ukraine, the war of Ukraine and Russia, integration of Ukraine to the EU, and rhetoric of skeptical political powers of those 4 countries. So here we go with our presentation, and actually it is in English as far as this is the perception for our English-speaking audience, and Ukrainian version of the text will be presented in the description to the given video, and it will be published on the website of Ukrainian Crisis Media Center soon. So, the methodology, I already mentioned that, so we can go to the results directly. Results of the research. And the first questioning that we made was about the general coverage and perception by experts how the topic of Ukrainian and Russian war is represented in media of their countries. Right? So, that is TV, radio, newspapers and magazines, and we see the following results. Well, actually Bulgaria here is quite separated because this is the only country where most of the experts who are questioned, they paid attention. The traditional media are paying less attention to Ukraine than they should have, and actually this is quite important. Rest of the countries here we see, for example, in Czech Republic, they consolidated that traditional countries are highlighting the topic of Russian and Ukrainian war. Poland and Romania also show approximately similar assessments, and with lower interest from traditional media regarding the topic of war. And we can also observe that in Romania, the second question was actually related to the first one, because here we are asking whether experts are thinking that more attention has to be paid to Russian and Ukrainian war in media, and Bulgarian experts, 87% of those we see, the vast majority is supporting the initiative on increasing the presence of the topic of war and the topic about Ukraine in Bulgarian media. So we can see certain dichotomy between the perception of experts and available situation in traditional Bulgarian media. As for the rest of the countries, then 2/3 of experts are considering that it is on the sufficient level, that the topic is presented, the topic about Ukrainian war and traditional media of those countries, and 1/3 or 1/4 of experts are thinking that more attention can be paid to this topic. However, these results, they are correlating with the first question, and if the experts answered that media are paying enough attention to Ukraine, then correspondingly they are thinking that the given situation, the given tendency has to be preserved, and in general, they are satisfied, as traditional media, how many attention they are paying to the topic of Ukraine. The third question was addressed in the field of social media, such as Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and we asked media experts of the 4 countries whether they notice some targeted attacks against Ukraine with an aim to discredit Ukraine as a country and Ukrainians who are in those countries. And we received such results. Then also Bulgarians, almost all the experts answered that they are observing attacks, focused attacks against Ukrainians and Ukraine and social segment of Bulgarian media. And that is also quite an alert, because we know that Bulgaria is one of the countries where, at least before the full-scale invasion, there were significant Russophilic tendencies and perception of Russia and activity of some anti-Ukrainian narratives and social networks. Bulgaria might play important role in strengthening those Russophilic tendencies, and the issue is about the field of youth, because it is involved in activity in these social networks, and this issue is also in the context of how youth of European countries is perceiving Ukraine and how relevant this topic is today for young European people. As for the Czech Republic, we can also see and observe quite an active voting of experts and focusing their attention, that they are really noticing such measures in social networks, measures that are targeting against Ukraine. And we can remind that in April this year, a whole network like Voice of Europe was detected, who was coordinated from Prague, and it belongs, due to some sources, to Viktor Medvedchuk, who is close to the president of Russia. So we can see that this topic of activity of pro-Russian actors and social networks of the Czech Republic is quite relevant, and this is also showing us some historical tendencies that are characterizing the journalist and somehow even expert environment in the Czech Republic that for a long time used to be filled with Russian agents, and Russia, at least until 2022, is considered the Czech Republic as a hub of information impact in Europe, and we can see that attempts to start doing this activity again, it was activated even this year, and here we are really grateful to both Czech special services and Polish special services investigators who found out, who investigated this activity, and such resources as Voice of Europe stopped its active media activity, even though we do not exclude that in the nearest future something similar might happen, especially taking into account the attempts that Russia tries to impose negotiations about peace in Ukraine, and we need to cause some pressure for European society. As for the Poland, experts are focusing their attention less on the attempts to discredit Ukrainians and the topic of Ukrainian integration in social networks. However, a significant percentage, more than half, are noticing such activities. In Romania, the situation is a bit better. However, just like we see from the previous questions, in general, situation in Romania is characterized by lower level of attention to the topic of Ukrainian Euro integration. So we get the results, like 50-50 experts from Romania are thinking that social networks are the platform within which anti-Ukrainian certain campaigns are developed and narratives are spread, aiming against the integration of Ukraine and discreditation of Ukraine in war with Russia. Question number 4, the next one, it's mostly about the idea of Euro integration of Ukraine, and here we asked about the presence in national media, the topic of Ukrainian Euro integration during May and June. That is the period that was before and actually was happening during the elections to the Euro Parliament. So we tried to document how the topic of Ukrainian Euro integration was important in these 4 countries in the context of campaign to the European Parliament. And in case of Bulgaria, we can see that in general the topic of Ukrainian integration was not the topic with the highest priority. Only 1/4 of experts mentioned that attention to Ukrainian integration is paid taking into account the events that are taking place, and 30%, quite significant part, are mentioning that this activization will take place only with the beginning of active negotiations. So this says that, well, and we actually noticed that 21% is mentioning that the topic of Euro integration of Ukraine in general is not relevant for Bulgarian media. So, first of all, we see quite low level of interest to the topic of Ukrainian integration and correlation, that is interconnection with the problematics regarding national interests of Bulgaria. That is, Ukrainian integration to the EU is causing some interest if this is about some economic issues that might impact the electoral processes in Bulgaria. However, the idea of expanding the EU and membership of Ukraine in the EU is not clearly articulated and is not causing significant interest from the side of media. And of course, it is a sign of the moods in the society, because the demand creates the proposition, and this is working not just in economy but also in information space. We also see that in the Czech Republic there is some interest to Ukrainian integration, and most experts are saying that, well, depending on relevant events, the topic of Ukraine joining the EU is appearing in the Czech media, and also significant part, 30%, are thinking that the topic will be discussed more actively already during more active phases of negotiations of Ukraine with Brussels. Poland is showing really similar results, and actually here we can use the conclusions that we made regarding the Czech Republic and to Poland, that is, results are quite identical, and the segment from Romania is mentioning that the topic of Ukrainian integration is depending on relevant events. Big news, maybe the visits of the state authorities, etc. The topic, it is mentioned in media, but it's a component, so it is coming up in the context of other events, and the focus might be changed a bit. Or so again, we are focusing on the main conclusions that are that the topic of Ukrainian integration is not in the top priority and is mostly depending on the current agenda. And, well, to a certain extent, this is not giving the clear focus on some ideological basis, based on idea of the integration of Ukraine and expanding European Union, which is not, as we can see, actively circulated in media of the countries that we were researching. And the last question is about the rhetorics of European right forces and skeptics. In these four countries, we asked the experts how the topic of Ukraine and Ukrainian Euro integration is actively present in the rhetorics of those political powers. And we can see that in Bulgaria, the opinions of experts differ, and we can mention that the topic of Ukraine is not of the highest priority, is not top 1, 2, 3 for experts, for media in Bulgaria. But of course, not for Bulgaria, but Euroscepticists in Bulgaria. And it depends on the relevant issues, whether on the further stages of negotiations of Ukraine with Brussels, with European Union, it will be. And it is important to mention similar signs because we can observe that in the rest of the countries as well. So mainly the experts were divided 50-50. Well, it depends on who considers that the topic of Euro integration and rhetoric of local Eurosceptics will play a bigger role in the further process of negotiations of Ukraine with Brussels. And at the same time, analogical number of experts are mentioning that beyond the context of negotiations, the topic will be present in the rhetoric of local Eurosceptical political powers. However, it is not of the top priority, and the agenda of local Eurosceptics, well, depending on relevant issues, it is emerging from time to time. Here I will finalize the presentation, and to some extent in some issues the results are the ones that we expected. In other cases, they are showing us some fields where we have to concentrate our further analytical efforts. And now I would like to switch to the second part of our event, actually to involve our honorable speakers to discussion and taking into account and comparing the four countries that participated in the research. Bulgaria has certain discrepancies in the context of lower interest to Ukraine from the side of traditional media, and very well is taking the active voting of experts and paying attention to activity in social networks of anti-Ukrainian actors. Now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Sonia Dymytrova-Martyniuk, editor of StopFake Bulgaria. StopFake in Bulgaria. And I know that Ms. Sonia has prepared also the presentation, so we can show that on our screens. And in the framework of the presentation of Ms. Dymytrova-Martyniuk, we would also like to, maybe we can articulate those results of our research. Like in our opinion, whether it shows the real things, and how can we as Ukrainian civil society interact more maybe with Bulgarian media so that we can promote more actively or tell more actively about Ukraine and increase this percent of presence of the topic of Ukrainian and Bulgarian space. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, now I will just try to see how it would be easier for me. Well, I'm really sorry to acknowledge that the results are adequately showing the situation in Bulgaria, and I will try to answer with my presentation to the question, why is it happening this way? And in the end, I can give some recommendations if possible. I mean, how to improve the situation. Well, as a headline for my presentation, I took part. So, is Bulgaria the weak part of the chain via which Russia will destroy Ukrainian attempts to join the EU? As you could understand from my name, I'm Bulgarian. I live in Ukraine since 1995. In 2015, I joined the team StopFake. And for people who don't know what it is, it's spring 2014. It was founded by the graduates and teachers of Kyiv Mahila School of Journalism. And it exists for 10 years already. And since then, they have already 6,000 of fakes that they explained about Ukraine and other relevant topics. And in different time, StopFake was published in 14 languages of the world. And thanks to this great database, we can reasonably make a conclusion regarding Bulgaria that the Kremlin propaganda has been creating the image of Ukraine as the country which is hostile towards Bulgaria. And now we are observing how hard negotiations are going with Hungary, because all the time we have this ethno map with the Hungarian minority in Ukraine, as if Ukraine is making some oppressions against minorities, etc. And I don't know whether this topic is highlighted in Ukraine. That's the conflict between Bulgaria and Northern Macedonia. And there, the base of that conflict is Bulgarian diaspora in Macedonia. But I am just talking about how this problem is communicated, and we can see that on our way in entering the EU, the topic of Bulgarian minority in Ukraine will be raised. And here I literally have 3 examples in different times. In Bulgaria, there was a fake that in Ukraine, Bulgarian language was forbidden after the beginning of the full-scale invasion in social networks. The photo was shown, the first one, as you see, is burning the Bulgarian flag, saying that it's in Donbass in 2015, but actually that is Northern Macedonia in 2021, quite recent incident or scandal, I don't know how to call that, when 3 representatives of Bulgarian diaspora in Ukraine said that the Bulgarian weapons in Ukraine are used against Ukrainian Bulgarians in Kherson Oblast. What are the narratives that were disseminated? Now I am taking after 2014. That Ukraine is conducting anti-Bulgarian politics and is oppressing Bulgarian identity. So this is a case that the Bulgarian language was prohibited. Actually, the law on language, which was adopted in 2017, expanded the rights of Bulgarians. And Bulgarians, thanks to this law, could study Bulgarian more. I would like to explain briefly. There is totally different situation. We cannot compare that situation with Bulgarian and Romanian schools. Bulgaria never had a Bulgarian school, Bulgarian language, and the places where Bulgarian diaspora is placed, it's like the faculty subject, twice per week, once per week. So it was optional subject, or one lesson per 2 weeks. And thanks to the law, Bulgarians could already start studying Bulgarian since the kindergarten, step by step at school, to explained Ukrainian, that is to expand teaching Bulgarian. This fake, here I would like to mention that in Bulgaria it was promoted by the People's Deputy of the Verkhovna Rada, Anton Kisa, of Bulgarian origin, who was present during voting, and I think he was more or less equating, like, he did not vote. So back then it was beneficial to say that Bulgarian language was forbidden. Another narrative that Ukrainians are trying to destroy all the remnants of Bulgarian history on Ukrainian territory. I took screenshots from the website of our colleagues from Bulgarian fact-checking. And yeah, indeed, in 2022, there was an act in Bulgarian village, Malapershchapina village in Poltava Oblast. And there is the grave of Han Kobarat, the founder of Old Big Bulgaria. In 2001, there was a memorial on the place where archaeological artifacts were found regarding Han Kobarat, and in 2021 on the first photo you can see the website of National Police of Ukraine that there was this vandal act. In 2022 it was raised in social networks again because social networks claimed that again there were some problems with the grave of Han Kobarat, and then again, a year later, the same pictures were published that Ukrainians are kind of trying to get rid of Bulgarian history and values. And there is BTV channel, one of the most popular ones in Bulgaria. In 2015, there was quite a big TV show that Ukrainian army is killing Bessarabian Bulgarians. They did not say that they are so sorry till now, even in spite of all the proofs and evidence that this did not take place. A bit later in 2017, the head of of news service of the same channel invited the head of agency for Bulgarians abroad, and I don't know whether everyone can see the map. The map without the Crimea, but it's also without the Volgograd region of Ukraine. And based on this map, they were thinking about the oppression that Bulgarians are experiencing in Ukraine and that they are oppressed due to their origin. Here we see the weird reaction.
Не вибачався.
Like half a year, the channel did not say that they are sorry, and after the claims, the same day they added the Crimea, but they did not add the Volgograd region. Why is that interesting? Because it is there in compact way the biggest diaspora Bulgarians in Ukraine are living. Well, I wish Petro Harlampia would have known that. Like, he should have known that, because this is what he is doing, what he's working on. For half a year, they didn't say that they are sorry. Ukrainian embassy contacted the head office of that channel, BTV, in the Czech Republic, and only after that, there was, like, that they were sorry, but not to the people of Ukraine, but they said that it was technical mistake and we added the Crimea and Volgograd region. But as for the fact that it's fake, that Bulgarian people in Ukraine are not experiencing any oppressions, it wasn't mentioned, not a single word. The other fakes after 2014, that Ukrainian Bulgarians want to have the autonomy and that they support this idea. Well, there I added, you won't see that well enough, but I will retell that there is a statement that Bulgarian people want autonomy in Ukraine. It was based on the letter, kind of, based on the letter signed by the head of Bulgarian community in Kherson, and later on he said that it's not his signature, and he never sent any of such claims to Poroshenko. And Bulgaria supports the idea about the autonomy in Odessa. There was a meeting of people who created Bessarabian People's Council, and the member of the party Ataka was present. Thanks to his presence, they mentioned that Bulgaria is supporting the idea about the autonomy. We also saw some false Bulgarians. It's just one screenshot. There were few protests like this, and it was quite funny to see as if Bulgarians are holding the placards, and they wanted the impeachment to Poroshenko, like their rights are violated, and kind of they wrote that in Bulgarian, but in Bulgarian there is such a sound O, which is shown by letter also O, and this letter wasn't written on those placards. And in 2017, the SSU saw that the Kremlin is still attempting to make Ukraine quarrel with our neighbors by artificially creating international conflicts, and they are speculating on the topic of oppression of national minorities. What did we see from the beginning of the full-scale invasion? The first wave of Ukrainian refugees, they haven't come to the borders of Bulgaria, but already on the 25th of February, at 8:30, there was an article at Iskra website, which is not really well known. We don't know about the owners of the channel, and we don't know who it belongs to, but it is totally pro-Russian. That is what we can say. And in this article, they mentioned all the fakes and manipulations that were there in Bulgarian space after 2014. They put that accurately into the folder, and they published that in 2022, that the Ivan Miliv, a Bulgarian person, was burned alive in Odessa, and Alexander Mikolov was shot in Odessa, and another person was burned in the 2nd of May 2014 in Odessa, turned the flags of Bulgaria. Then there was violation against a memorial, Bulgarian memorial. Then one person was beaten up heavily. Then the first act after the issues, meaning the change of Yanukovych. So the first act of that revolution was to cancel the laws that guaranteed the right of Bulgarian language. If you are surprised what kind of law it is, it's Kivalov's law, which did not guarantee the right of Bulgarian language but Russian. And here administrative territorial reform was added, and the aim of the reform was mentioned that Bulgarians would get rid of the majority in those regions, and the law on the population which has been living there, which is kind of discriminating Bulgarians. For those who cannot read, they created such a department for TikTok with all those points mentioned, and this is taken from the Bulgarian Socialistic Party. Like, one of the deputies just posted that on their page, and when I wrote the claim, it had more than 15,000 reviews and 17,000 of reactions. It takes some time, but how all of these fakes are being done? Well, not trying hard. They took, you can see to the right, the photo of the person with the Bulgarian flag. They took the photo of the real person, and they said that it's Ivan Milif, who was, well, he really died in the fire, but he is not of Bulgarian origin, and this is how he looks like on the other photo. And as it always happens with the propaganda of Kremlin, it's not just a live person, but this person is actively disseminating Russian propaganda on their webpage. And I know how his photo caught the eye of creators of the fake. Why did I take this example? Because all the fakes sometimes have some truth, but burning the Ukrainian the flag. Indeed, there was such a case in 2015 when Rustam Planilev, the president at the time, came to Ukraine, and they had the flags of different countries on the pillars, and then with the lamps, Bulgarian flag looked like Russian, so people indeed took off some of those flags and torn them apart, and this case was used like in 7 years in order to say that in Ukraine people are burning Bulgarian flags. And the photo that they took, well, of course it's not as good as real. I mentioned that already. It was Northern Macedonia. It's just really tense relationship, really difficult relationship between Bulgaria and Northern Macedonia. Who is promoting the narratives? Well, if we don't take into account the one about the president of Bulgaria who was elected twice to the position of the president, twice he's been asked whose Crimea is, and twice he answered that it's Russian. And vice president, well, also wasn't far from the words of the president. Politicians, political parties. By the way, somehow in Ukraine it is considered that Socialist Party is very powerful and impactful, and they are saying the words of the head of this party. Well, yeah, they have some impact, but in the latest 7 years, they lost a lot of their authority, and now anti-Ukrainian narratives are disseminated by Возрождение party. And the head is Kostadinov, probably you know him, Kostya Kupaykin. So he is more known for the other things. Well, in addition to the obvious agents of Russian impact, there is something that is not that obvious, like professional unions as a Union of Bulgarian Journalists. I would like to mention there is Association of Bulgarian Journalists who are separating themselves from the community of Bulgarian journalists. The community of Bulgarian writers, conflict of that union and the ambassador Vitaly Mosklenko, they wrote a declaration that the Union of Bulgarian Writers have always been for Russia and they never acted against the interests of Russia. Then other different agents of grain producers. It's just this protest was a bit lost of Bulgarian farmers of grain. They were a bit lost because Poland was still out. So, not to take a lot of time, actually popular media are writing a lot about Ukraine, but even specialists can just omit that with their attention because the manipulations there are... I can't even find the right word right now. So the shelling for of the Ahmadet Hospital. On the website of Bulgarian National Radio, there is a material that Bulgarian Ministry of Health invited the ambassador of Ukraine to Bulgaria and said that Bulgaria will take for treatment Ukrainian children. So you can imagine, just like in the whole article, everywhere is Ukrainian children who suffered, but not a single word about Russia. It's hard for me to leave the page and to rejoin. But they don't mention Russia. They don't mention war, not even war in Ukraine. Just Ukraine, 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 and not a single word about Russia. In addition to popular media, well, of course, a lot of disinformation is from anonymous websites, also from public activists, journalists, and singers. And one of the brightest figures is the actor and singer Ruslan Minov. He's Bessarabian Bulgarian from Ismail, he's well known in Bulgaria, comic actor. And since the very beginning, he said, before the full-scale invasion, that Russia is having war with NATO, that he took his mom from Ismail or from Odessa. Well, I just missed that moment after something was burned there, that in Ukraine people's attitude is against the Bulgarians, and he has huge audience and people do trust him. And then also the users of social networks here on screenshots I showed some of the most active actors who are promoting Ukrainian narratives. You can just pay attention there at the bottom. There is a person who is smiling sincerely, that is the presenter on Bulgarian National Radio. It was the name of the show is politically incorrect, and the radio that has to promote Bulgarian line, just imagine yourself, Bulgaria is the member of NATO and the EU. So he was criticizing European orientation of Bulgaria, and there was even a speech regarding his show, that he's disseminating Russian propaganda and disinformation. And I guess like one time he was told something about that, and now in the latest elections he became a deputy of European Parliament. And it is already known that is from the Возрождение party, and it is already known that they are going to be in one fraction with Alternative for Germany. What do we do? Still, I've been giving a lot of screens, but this one is really minimalistic. This is voting in Bulgarian parliament about the military aid to Ukraine in November 2022. You can see that back then 175 people's deputies voted for it. We have 240 deputies in there. So this is what we are aiming at. So that this kind of support of Ukraine in Bulgarian parliament. So this is what we should be aiming at. What do we do? The work of the embassy of Ukraine in Bulgaria is very active. If you go to their website, you can see how many initiatives they have, some events, exhibitions, presentations, meetings. Well, they do a great job, and very often I am just noticing that even like a Bulgarian embassy in Kyiv would have been just as active. The situation would have been quite different. By the way, Alisa Ivashchuk, she went to Bessarabia before going to Bulgaria, and she met the seniors, let us call them this way, of Bulgarian communities. And this is really helping her in her work, because when Kostadinov the leader of Возрождение is coming and he says, in Ukraine, Bulgarian language was forbidden and there is oppression of the rights. There is reaction from Bulgarian community in Ukraine who comes with letters, with proofs, with evidence that it's not this way. It's totally different. And they have really good achievements there. And we have Tatiana Stanova, the editor in Bulgaria, and she is organizing such a festival of documentaries, Oko. I don't know, unfortunately, how many such festivals of documentaries took place, but she is showing movies about Ukraine in there, which is really valuable. And to the order of Bulgarian Ministry of Defense, she shot a movie about Bulgarian Bessarabs who are participating in war with the armed forces of Ukraine. Letters from war. It was shown on the TV, Bulgarian TV, as far as I know. Now he is looking for some money to make the second part of the movie. It's very important to do. Historical diplomacy. Bulgaria and Ukraine have really a lot of joint moments in history, and we have to focus our attention on that. And then I have one more point. Orthodox Ukrainian Church, and recently in Bulgaria they chose the patriarch, and they chose the option which is the worst one for Ukraine, because the difference between Daniel and Grigory, 3 voices. Grigory is considered more moderate, and the new patriarch, before that he was saying that in war in Ukraine, like Ukraine and Bulgaria were guilty just the same way. He was always in contact with Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine. He says that the Orthodox Ukrainian Church doesn't exist, and Russian propaganda in Bulgaria is also coming through church, because the Patriarch Filaret was really supporting the division in Bulgaria, and he was even present at Pimen's intronization, and Bulgarians did not forget that. And we need to work in this direction really well. After the election of Daniil, Epiphany greeted him in Ukrainian and in Bulgarian, and he mentioned the cases from history that are repeated in both Bulgarian and Ukrainian church, how Bulgaria and Ukraine were fighting for independent church, and what kind of obstacles were there, what difficult moments did they face. I was looking, but I didn't find answer from Daniil. I just found that he was communicating with Onufrian. This is also very important. We will see how the situation with Bulgarian church will happen, as the organizations also of impact. I will tell about that in positive examples. So what can the Orthodox Ukrainian Church do? Well, with the Melitopol local church that belonged to Kiev Patriarchy, well, the Bulgarians are living there really compact way. Unfortunately, after the occupation of that region, the priest just left and the church was given to Moscow Patriarchy, but there is precedent, well, that it's allowed to make in Bessarabia and like Paternoster, for example, we can read in Bulgarian and step by step involve Bulgarian faithful people. Well, why did I take the 2 screens? The websites that are spreading Russian propaganda, however, here you can see that still they wrote that the choir, church choir from Varna met in the monastery the new patriarch, and he was greeted and they sang a song to him, and that is a choir of children from Bulgaria and Ukraine, and Ukrainian children are refugees, and mother of one of children is serving in the monastery. And so this pro-Russian website decided to make the material about this case, and Fakty.BG, it's a bit outdated event when Kostadinov was saying that here has to be Bulgarian autonomy and temporarily occupied by Ukraine, and he got the answer from the community. And that website, Facts, decided to write about that, and I started with StopFake, and I will end with StopFake. Since April this year, StopFake, in partnership with Google News Initiative, make such workshops in different countries of Europe where we are telling about our experience and how we are fighting disinformation, and we are seeing journalists and teachers, students, with people who are interested in disinformation there at place. And there was such a workshop in Sofia, and it was very interesting. The public, the Ministry of Defense of Bulgaria, and I think that we have quite good relationship, and on such meetings we can hear such feedback what Ukraine has to do further on. By the way, those who were the elected people, they said we still haven't figured out why in February 2014, like, it was not the insurgency, and like we don't have sufficient information. So we are explaining that all the time. I was showing the example with those Bulgarians who kind of were there burned, but still we need to remind of that all the time, and like we already performed our duties. We need to remind that all the time. And there is another moment that was mentioned, just lack of information about Bulgarian people in Ukraine. At the beginning, I mentioned that most probably they will play this card, and we need to make sure that Bulgarians are voluntarily going to the armed forces of Ukraine. Bulgarians are here in really high positions, and just like never, two deputies of Bulgarian origin, Yehor Chernev, Anton Kiseki, by the way, after the full-scale invasion, he started having this pro-Ukrainian position. Plachkov, who is coming very often with comments about the situation with energy. A lot of journalists, and it's just like, I hear that straight away. I hear those Bulgarian surnames. Those are Bulgarians who are adapted and integrated. How is it to work as a journalist? You have to know Ukrainian. You have to know Ukrainian realities in order to perform your work properly. Thank you for your attention. I guess I took a bit more time. I could have told much more, but I truly hope that you understand from the situation a bit what is happening in Bulgaria, why there are such results. Thank you. Thank you very much for such a broad analysis of media landscape of Bulgaria, and actually overview of the main actors who are acting in the main interests, who are discrediting Ukraine and Ukrainians, and some examples of successful activity and recommendations how to act. So now I'd like to give the floor to Natalia Agarkova, chef editor of Ukrainian edition about Ukraine in the Czech Republic, and here separately separate topic, the role of Ukrainian refugees. And Ukrainian refugees are the object of Russian disinformation, and Ukrainian actors who might promote the interests of Ukraine and can tell more about Ukraine and its role in media of European countries. So please, Natalia, Agarkova, just show the insights that you have regarding the Ukrainians in the Czech Republic, because we know that Ukrainian refugees, more than 380,000 of people since 2022 are living in that country. And in general, actually, what recommendations Ms. Natalia can give us as representatives of the public in communicating with media and experts. But at the end, I have to remind you that we have limitations in time, and unfortunately, we are out of our time a bit, so like 10 minutes, please. Hello, can you hear me well? I am greeting everyone. I would like to mention a few words about our media. This media was created by Ukrainians. I am a Ukrainian journalist who is working for almost 30 years in media in Ukraine. But when I was evacuated after the beginning of the full-scale invasion to the Czech Republic, I saw that there are no Ukrainian media and a lot of Russian media. We combine our efforts with the refugees, journalists from Ukraine, and we created the media. Our media about Ukraine is for Ukraine, so to say, so double name we have. We are the biggest Ukrainian-speaking media in the Czech Republic. You mentioned correctly that in the Czech Republic there is the biggest number of refugees per person of population. Now it's almost 10% of population. I mean, not only refugees, but those Ukrainians who already lived on the territory of the Czech Republic before the full-scale invasion. You also mentioned that the network of disinformation was really powerful, which was acting not only in the Czech Republic but on the territory of Europe. But I would like to mention that dozens of those continue working, and I would call the scale of that as Ukrainians and Ukraine as a state, it is just catastrophic. I will make few examples, the latest examples. They are expanding not only on the territory of Czech Republic, but also in general in Europe. And the latest messages sounds as follows. In Ukrainian school books, Hitler is a figure which is highlighted as the one who is liberating Ukraine from Soviet occupation. And this is a message which is spread not just by a person from the street, a representative of the platform, but representative of the parliament from Czech political power. And if we know, as we know, this doesn't exist, and people with critical thinking might check all the handbooks, all the books are available online, but let us be true. How many people, after reading the post, will check the information? I think that just few. However, the reviews of the post, dozens of thousands, hundreds of sharings, the post of from the parliament of such open lies about Ukraine. Second example, there is platform the Three Color Prague on Facebook, which is spreading this information about Ukraine. And Ukrainians in April this year, for example, they told that the president Volodymyr Zelensky has bought for 20 million pounds the house from King Charles. Maybe someone heard that, but the president of Ukraine is a very convenient target for disinformators, because people in their countries, they are watching the news, reading media, and the president of Ukraine is the figure which is shown there quite often. And today they are reading about President Zelensky, who bought this house for 20 million pounds. And tomorrow they see our president, for example, who is telling about the importance of supporting Ukraine, the importance of financial support, and this disbalance in heads of people, it remains. Because the critical thinking, again, I would like to stress that it's a small number of people who are thinking about that, and most of them are reacting emotionally to the things that they've heard. And a big part, even in the Czech Republic, because we know that Czech Republic is a country which is really and really supporting Ukraine. But let us recall the biggest meeting, 70,000, which was in the Czech Republic, actually. The aim was kind of against increasing the prices and bad life in the Czech Republic, but actually the placards were against Ukraine and against Ukrainians and of the year. So why I am mentioning this large scale and why I am bringing these examples, because I want to show not the absurd but lack of systemic work from the side of Ukraine and Ukrainians. Now, for example, in the Czech Republic, a lot of public organizations are losing financial support, which used to be, since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the biggest organization that helped refugees has no support, UNICEF, and it just disappeared. And those are not dozens or hundreds of Ukrainians, but thousands, and they came there, and this is true information. That's the possibility to take some kind of actions and to take those people to talk about Ukraine. So from our Czech colleagues, we had some support, but we've lost that as well, and we are working as volunteers, but how long we will be able to work as volunteers? I think you all understand that that's an issue, and we were applying for different grants, and I am worried about the position of big foundations who are supporting Russian, Belarusian journalists actively, and they are not supporting Ukrainian ones. They are just ignoring them, and the answer that was given to me unofficially in personal discussion was that we are supporting Ukrainian media in Ukraine. It is clear, and we are all supporting this position because actually in Ukraine the situation is really difficult and the support of Ukrainian media is extremely important, but lack of systemic work abroad is leading to disseminating those fakes and only increasing their number. Now, Ukrainian journalists and European, we are reacting to fakes, but we are not making some steps forward. We are repeating, we are discussing what Russian propaganda says, but the systemic work, unfortunately, it is absent. And at the time, Russian propaganda is just increasing. It is well financed. For example, in the Czech Republic, all those moments that I mentioned, they are well financed, and those are huge money for media and disseminating Russian propaganda. I would like to tell about one moment this year when the elections to Euro Parliament were taking place. Czech authorities realized that Ukraine is going to be in the center of the discussion. Not that much discussion, but fakes and manipulations. Therefore, it was decided to conduct such meetings that were called Without Lies. And representatives of the government came to meet the usual Czech people, and they were talking about Ukraine. It had just a crazy demand, and it was incredibly popular. And it was hard to go there and ask the question. So we were trying to play to avoid manipulations, but still those took place. I wanted to tell another moment regarding the refugees, fakes that are disseminated in all social networks, and also about the platforms that I mentioned, the deputies and the page Three Color Prague, and those pages, they were mentioned as untruthful information, but this did not help not to disseminate this disinformation further to people. Therefore, there is a problem not of just blocking and showing fake disinformation in social networks, but the fact that it remains there. For example, our claims, like, for example, like to block the information or something, well, this is still in open access. It was not banned or blocked. So such media organizations as we are abroad, it's one thing, but we need to think about the internal policy of social networks where disinformation is marked but not always deleted. There is another moment that I discussed with the Ukrainian authorities, representatives, and the embassy here in the Czech Republic. It's support of Ukrainian things abroad. If we are talking about British schools in the Czech Republic, they are financed by Britain. If you are talking about some other centers abroad, French centers financed by France. If we are talking about something Ukrainian abroad, unfortunately now those are organizations who are looking for self-financing from some funds and organizations, or they are just volunteers, and there is no guarantee of systemic work. So as for the position of Ukrainian authorities, I heard such an opinion that now they are going to create institutes at the embassies, and they will have the opportunity to finance the initiatives. But the problem is to create something new and to ignore the existing things. It's not really okay. So my personal opinion, but I would like to stress here, not just my personal opinion, as Ukrainian media abroad, we have, well, it's not registered yet, but Association Polish Media and German Ukrainian language media. So we all have the same opinion that we need to support something that is already functioning, not to create something new. It might be the point for discussion inside of Ukraine and improve the cooperation. So I know that many more people have to speak, so I won't give all the information. You can read that on our website in open access. And of course, to encourage Ukrainian media for cooperation, because I saw such an opinion that in the first year I was communicating with Ukrainian media so that they just send the link to us. Like, for example, if they are telling something about the Czech Republic because it is supporting Ukrainian content abroad and cooperation, and many people join such cooperation, but still there are Ukrainian media, national media, that, for example, are taking information about the Czech Republic from Russian-speaking websites in the Czech Republic. And still, for me, it remains nonsense. Why is that happening this way? Thank you. I won't take much time. If you have any questions, and please, I'm always open for cooperation. Thank you so much, Ms. Natalia, and actually, a special thank you for your active work in the Czech Republic. It is really needed on an advocacy. Unfortunately, the problems are significant in terms of financing and other issues, but I truly hope that our event will have certain information impact, and in general, the combination of the activity of public society will attract attention to this problem, and this issue sooner or later will move from today's maybe not the best positions. Now I would like to address the experience of Ukrainian and Polish relationship, which was complicated, and taking into account the stories with blocking the border, and at the same time we can see in the example of sociological research, the Polish opinion, that most people from Poland, they are supporting Ukraine in the war against Russia. However, the topic of trusting Ukrainian authorities and President Zelensky, what was shown by Pew Research Center, the level of trust personally to Ukrainian management reduced, and this also impacted the support of Ukrainian reintegration, and there is certain discrepancy between the support of safety context and Euro integration context, because economy is also impacting that. So I'd like to ask Stanislav Zhelikhovskyi, the corresponding member of the Academy on Geopolitics and Geostrategy, well-known expert in Ukraine, about Polish issues as well. In your opinion, how did the situation with blocking the borders impact, and in general, the contradicting context of the last year of Polish and Ukrainian relationship, what impact it had on the dynamics of highlighting the topic of Ukraine in Polish media, and will Russia try, well, I mean, not pro-Russian, but Eurosceptic parties like Confederation, which is growing in electoral field of Poland, might it impact further on that the relationship in between us will become worse, or this is some seasonality caused by elections in Poland, and further on we will have more positive dynamics? Thank you so much for the floor given. Thank you for the invitation, for the interesting invitation, and I think that such researches, indeed, they are very important. And those countries such as Czech Republic, Romania, Bulgaria, and Poland, they are the states from our region, and it's very important how those countries are perceiving us in all the possible aspects. So indeed, I am supporting, and we need to make a focus on that, and we need to work in this field still a lot. I will also use that opportunity and greet all of us with the day of Ukraine state, because it's one of the very important events. The day of Ukrainian statehood, because we were kind of setting up ourselves, our culture as European, our people as European, and correspondingly we are coming back to big European family, of course, by huge efforts and just crazy losses, especially as for the Russian-Ukrainian war, which obviously has also the reasons not to let Ukraine to integrate to some Western connections. Therefore, Russia is attempting in every possible way to just take Ukraine from that European path, and even such countries as Poland or the Czech Republic or some other countries that we are discussing right now, they are using it there so that some kind of things might be made so that Ukraine doesn't succeed. But we are a European nation, and I believe that, the day will come, the day which actually will return us to European civilization, and as a matter of fact we are already there, but still we need to fight, and we need to do everything possible in order to preserve our statehood and our identity and to protect Western civilization. If we take the Polish Republic, then this country, of course, is one of the biggest supporters of our European integration, the country which multiple times proved that they can advocate the interests of Ukraine in the EU and Northern Atlantic Alliance. And we see that we had quite a lot of such positive pages in the history of our countries, but of course here we have both ups and downs, and that's not just about the full-scale invasion, but such events took place even before the big war. And I would like to remind, for example, the events of 2018-2019, when indeed there were some problems that we had with Poland regarding such issues, regarding the historical past in particular. Very often the issue of tragic pages was raised, the story of Volhynia, and now we see what happened with those scary events, but still we don't know when we finally will be able to put maybe not the full stop, but at least some sign, that will stop these discrepancies. As for now, we have some things quiet in this sense because the government has changed, but we know that the previous authorities, they just kept their things for the new authorities, like, for example, the events of Volyn tragedy. They call it genocide, etc. And unfortunately, this is still lasting. And of course, it is not beneficial for the bilateral relationship between Ukrainians and Polish people. But you mentioned correctly, Mr. Volodymyr, that we have other challenges, and the last year has shown it. For example, 2022. In general, it was very positive for Ukrainians and Polish people in the sense, like, both improving the cooperation, improving the understanding of each other, and also in the context of support. And we could see that Poland took a lot of people to their territory, those who were escaping from Russian and Ukrainian war, and they helped a lot in providing different weapons to just defend ourselves from Russian aggression, and is playing role of the hub so that we can get weapons and any other tools so that we can withstand Russian aggression. And we do remember that the videos from the meetings, that indeed a lot of positive things happen, and nothing actually predicted that 2023 will again become the breakable year for our relationship. And this happened, as you mentioned properly, due to the election processes that happen in Poland. And still they have to have the presidential elections, but the parliament elections impacted mostly the Ukraine. And the media feel, let us say so, that if earlier on they were perceiving as positively, they were calling the war, and there was huge support, in particular the European integration of our country, then 2023 changed the situation. And first of all, we need to understand that the big role was played by political forces in all of this, and the Confederation is one of such forces which was present as those protest actions that happened from the side of Polish farmers and then motor drivers, and they demanded actually the possibility to put embargo from the side of Poland and all the EU to Ukrainian products, and that kind of how it was perceived. The Polish market, even though earlier they had much bigger problems, and, well, let us say so, something was made since 2022 so that Ukrainian products can be transported well by Polish roads to the ports, to other EU countries. They also did not develop the logistics properly that could have improved that, and also preservation of the products in the warehouses. And that indeed became the reason why the Polish market was so overfilled with Ukrainian products, and the prices for Polish products reduced significantly, and that was used by different political powers later on, as the Confederation mentioned, and Polish Agricultural Party. Everything was made so that people can come to the new parliament. On the 15th of October, there were elections, and obviously that impacted the perception of Ukrainians. And still, now, like these days, on one of the websites and portals dedicated to agrarian topic, it is mentioned that European integration is a threat, as a matter of fact, for agrarian sector of Poland and European Union especially. They are saying that integration of Ukraine can lead to the budget stress, because we need to reform Ukrainian agrarian sector. We know that it's a very serious issue in the context of our negotiations about entering the EU. And it might be kind of impacted by certain political powers, so that in a negative way they are highlighting Ukrainian Euro integration, and even the politicians of the Justice Party, when there were the peak periods before, about like our contradictions, they were mentioning also that Poland can just slow down the process in order not to have the problems with the agrarian problems. And many people are comparing us with Poland for 2024. But now we can see that Poland is on the place of Germany as the situation was 20 years ago, and correspondingly now they can dictate their conditions, and they are well aware of that. In my opinion, still, elections to the parliament made the amendments. And we can see that pro-European and more pro-Ukrainian maybe party and public platform came to power, and now we can see that those issues are not that acute, especially now after they had elections to the parliament, their parliament, European Parliament. Now we can speak about a bit weaker or like acute perception of Ukraine and Ukrainian products and Ukrainians. Well, of course, here we also should understand that one problem led to the other problems. And when there was a peak of those protests, such party like Confederation was blaming Ukraine in everything. And obviously, it was mentioned that like a lot of Ukrainian migrants and that Poland spends a lot of money for the defense of our country, etc., etc. This might have some risks for the safety of Poland itself, even though Confederation, well, it is more for obtaining some own political dividends, and very often they are suspected in cooperation with the Russian Federation, and we cannot exclude that because many narratives are really similar to Russian ones. And in Poland still there are certain public, certain social networks, or maybe Telegram channels that are feeding those moods. And actually that is why Confederation is obtaining some voices in national or in national elections. Well, and we should understand that still Poland is still really, like Russia is really interested for Poland to stop supporting us in our war against the aggressor, and also that is about our European Euro-Atlantic path. And various agent elements are taking place, and a lot of such elements were found and liquidated. However, we cannot exclude the fact that they are still present to some extent, because still Poland is a potential like target after Ukraine. So that is why Russia is trying to work there via their impact agents, via propaganda. However, they have much less of that than in Bulgaria, for example, or in the Czech Republic, because still Poland is more against Russia in the context of their historical experience, because still they suffered, I guess, the most among other nationalities, because it was Russia who destroyed Polish nationality. And now we see that the situation is kind of improving, but there are still some problems. And as for my advice, we need to continue working strongly, both from the side of Ministry of Foreign Affairs and other Ukrainian institutions. And we also have to work in the context of work for the public sector. By the way, here church is not playing the role. If you take, for example, the situation with Bulgaria, because like Poland, it's a Catholic country, and the Church of Moscow Patriarchy is there, but they are not that impactful. And well, here we cannot involve the church component, or we can involve that in a really narrow context, however, in cooperation between the authorities, representatives, between the expert environment and cultural diplomacy. Well, the field for their activity is really broad, and we need to expand that because never is enough. And we have to understand that we always can do more and better. And that will only be for the benefit of Ukraine in those countries that we are working in, because altogether we are fighting the same enemy, because Poland itself is the object of hybrid attacks from Russian Federation. In particular, we might mention the context of artificially created migration crisis and other acts of their activity. And we can see, like, if we understand that we are all in this same, like, if we are all together, if we are defending the world, then we have to build the strategy. How can we cope with challenges efficiently? Challenges that take place among our population, among our nationalities, and also build the strategies that were aiming against the external enemy. And such an aggressive country as Russian Federation, it is so good that in this sense we have such an important platform as Lublin Triangle, because it is improving our relationship indeed. And also summit of NATO in Washington showed itself in really good context, because Poland will become the pioneer here. And there will be the center of Ukraine in NATO, where Ukrainian militaries will learn, and then they will be able to share their experience. And thus, we can kind of be aligned with Western standards of the alliance more, who will make us closer to Western world. So I think that Poland can help us with that further on. And we see that they themselves were victims of rocket attacks that we are seeing almost every day in Ukraine. Therefore, we are actually hoping that a lot of discrepancies will be solved, and just like any other nationalities, we will be able to withstand, to kind of defeat ourselves from Russian strategy, and we will build the post-war world that won't know the signs of that axis of evil that wants to change the world order that exists for many years. And we are making all efforts in order to achieve our victory. Thank you very much, Mr. Stanislav. And actually, in order to continue your speech, I would like to go to the main conclusions. In the framework of our discussion, we see the necessity to strengthen the Ukrainian media abroad and also involve Ukrainian refugees, Ukrainian diaspora abroad. That is, here we still have to do a lot of work in order to represent Ukraine abroad in general. And I think that this project, which was implemented by Ukrainian Crisis Media Center with the support of the Renaissance Foundation, I think it will be helpful in this. And further on, I guess we can continue the researching of the topics that were chosen in the framework, in this framework, because we actually wrote and we conducted presentations of 2 analytical notes dedicated to the topic of disinformation, discreditation of the idea of Ukrainian Euro integration in Romania, Bulgaria, Poland, and the Czech Republic. And in the framework of those notes, there was the opinion of experts from those countries. That is, we received the mirror vision of that problem, and there's a lot of things in common, but in each country there are some worries in the context of Ukrainian integration, and we need to work with each country separately, and we have to pay attention to local agenda and local topics that are worrying locals. And these are the topics where those political powers are trying to create barriers for Ukrainian integration, including the media space. So I would like to thank for the attention to all the participants, especially to those who listen to us, and especially to our speakers who in spite of such incredible heat, they managed to join us today in the press center. The results will be published on the website of Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, as well as in description under this video. You will find all the links to the results of the expert research and so on. Stay in touch.